afternoon, everyone. Welcome inside the SR 1029 FM The Game Studios. It's a Wednesday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. It's about 2:45 on the East Coast. Hope everyone had a good sports Tuesday and you're enjoying your Wednesday, the 18th of February, 2026. Get in on the conversation. We are going baseball heavy over the next 45 minutes to an hour. Get social with me. Very easy to do at SR 1029 FM The Game. You can follow me on X at Rich Q on Q, IG at Rich Q on Q, TikTok, Rich Q on the mic. Like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are enjoying the content that we are trying to give you each and every day. We try to make it engaging, as we like to say. Busy show. Javon Alford, as I mentioned, about 10 to 15. He's going to chime in, talk a lot of baseball with him. You know, the fallout now with this whole Tony Clark situation is just absolutely just incredible. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So you got Bruce Meyer now, who addressed the media this morning after the MLBPA visited Royals camp in the wake of Clark's resignation. And Meyer turned around and said, "I don't anticipate that anyone's going to be leading negotiations other than me." Not good. Not good. I told you this. They'd rather have had Marino in there, the lawyer. So I gave you listen, when we were getting off the air yesterday, we mentioned the allegations, or I should say the scandal that it seems to be quite honest, almost like is kind of rocking baseball right now, and rightfully so, because you have a grown man in Tony Clark that has an affair with his sister-in-law. Oh, by the way, who was hired, that's another thing, hired to be part of the MLBPA. So you're talking about, probably in one of the most, I don't even want to say just crazy days in MLBPA history. Clark had to resign because of this internal investigation. He had an inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, who's a union employee. And it's crazy because now you had all these players debating later on in the day and then early today who's going to take over. And it's just a horrible, horrible, horrible look for baseball. It's a horrible look for Tony Clark. I have absolutely no idea. I mean, you can kind of be light here and say, hey, that's all about keeping it in the family. That's horrible. I'm not even trying to joke. I mean, what are we thinking here? Clark and his wife's sister. Think about that. So the federal investigation covered the relationship between Clark and his wife's sister. Come on, man. That's a disgrace. Seriously. That's a disgrace, man. You don't park your car in someone else's driveway, let alone your neighbor's. And that's exactly what Tony Clark did. I mean, just, man, you just can't teach stupid. You really can't. You really can't teach stupid. And it's bad enough now they're trying to figure out who else had the hand in the cookie jar when it comes to money. But I'll tell you, the owners now, they are going to seek a salary cap like the other three major sports. And I can tell you right now, the union is opposed to it. And we went through the pros and cons. But this is just a horrible look right now for baseball, and it's a horrible look for Tony Clark. So we'll get into that a little more today. As I mentioned, I want to get into this Dave Dombrowski and Bryce Harper. My mind's on football. Bryce Harper situation, right? Because it's funny, man. You've got a lingering kind of relationship going on right now, right? And what's really ironic is I think Bryce Harper understands how much pressure is on him this coming season, and really how much pressure is on the Philadelphia Phillies. And I thought it was funny because now you get this rift going on between Harper and the GM, and now the Yankees fans are getting in there, right? Because all of a sudden, hey, let's grab this guy. Here we go. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, the Yankees did what they did in the offseason. They made their bed. They got to lie in it. Harper's not going anywhere. He's not. He's really not. And the funny thing is, when you have a player like Harper, and no one is disputing or debating the merits of his career, his talent, okay? The numbers speak for themselves. But what Dave Dombrowski mentioned and said isn't something that is earth shattering. It isn't, because he went out in public and he criticized or actually just gave his opinion on the face of the franchise. So listen, I can say this, Harper, to some extent, he's also to blame, and Dombrowski is also to kind of blame too for saying what he said. But ultimately, I didn't have a problem with it if two things can be true, right? If two things can be true, because the bottom line is this: he's a quality player, he's an all-star caliber player, and when the GM comes down and says didn't have an elite season like he's had in the past, I guess we only find out if he becomes elite or he continues to be good. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, honestly, it's unusual for a GM or someone in that position and or standing to say something like that publicly. But listen, sometimes, man, you can take a little shot here and there and try to wake them up. And last year he had a down year. It was the first time in 3 years he didn't appear to receive any MVP ballots, any MVP votes. You talk about the last two postseasons for the Philadelphia Phillies. Aside from last season, Real Muto was the only one that hit. They got bounced in 4 games, respectively, to the Mets and the Dodgers. That offense is pretty much just gone south. And Harper's the catalyst because he makes a substantial amount of money. And if you're going to sit there and say that Harper's the face of the franchise, well, then ultimately he's got to perform in the postseason. That's how we judge the great players. And look, the Dodgers, that was a tough series. Those first 2 games, they were close games. They lost. They didn't get late run support. They didn't get late. They couldn't move guys over. They lost 5-3 the first game, 4-3 the second. They won the third game. They blew them out. And then they lost a heartbreaker in 11. And we know how that turned out with the wild pitch and whatnot. And the goofy play late, right? Trying to get it home. So ultimately, it comes down to the players that need to hit and perform. And when you're talking about alleged all-time great in Bryce Harper, well, 3 of 15 with 1 run and 1 double is not going to get it done. It's just not. And like I said, the only one that hit in that series was JT, 6 of 17. No one else hit, but you got to look at Harper because he is supposed to be the catalyst. And his numbers have gone down respectively. Okay? Go down respectively. So you can't sugarcoat it. So they need him to be that all-star MVP caliber player. And I'm looking around the NL right now, and I'm looking at the NL East, and I stand by this. I'm not going to sit here and I won't guarantee that the Mets are winning the division. I'm not going to say that. It's the Phillies division to win. If you even look at their projected lineup, which is still a solid lineup, right? Because Schwarber, they signed him to big bucks. Real Muto is coming back. Obviously, you subtract Castellanos, right? And you're hoping that maybe in October the offense clicks. Now, the Phillies, with their signings, not as productive, right? With the Mets, right? The Mets are trying to think, okay, we are World Series hopefuls, right? We're trying to figure out what we can do with the hand that we've been dealt. And obviously the Mets, you know about what the Mets did in the offseason, and you know about the pieces and the players that the Mets lost in the offseason, okay? So you add in Bichette, you add in Peralta, you add in Luis Robert Jr., Devin Williams, the closer, Marcus Semien, Jorge Polanco, Luke Weaver, and then you lose to Polar Bear, you lose Nimmo, you lose McNeil, you lose Diaz. So a lot of people still believe that the focus going into the offseason and the winner for the Mets improved pitching and defensive depth, right? And that's why they had to go out and get another top of the rotation arm in Peralta. Miami's a young team that's still trying to find their way. The Braves are a veteran team. And then Washington's kind of a mixed bag. So it could be right there for the Philadelphia Phillies. It could be. It could be right there for the Philadelphia Phillies. But I think it's a long season, and I'm not going to hang my hat on 95-plus wins. I'm not doing that. All right, we got some Phil's comments coming in already. My man, DBER Handle chimes in. What's up? What's up, brother? I know he's hoping his Yankees win 90-95. We'll get into the AL later on in the week. But yeah, I think Nick already and Wally for chiming in. Q. I can see this team winning 92-96 with their pitching. 92-96 with their pitching. Okay. Well, I don't know what to tell you on that one. That's very interesting. I'm not really sure about that, but we will dive into it. Yeah, Yankees 102. No, not happening. And by the way, for those chiming in, all you have to do, you subscribe to the channel. You should get the alert. I'll double check. I see some guys are saying that as well. I see Sal in Baltimore fired off early. Yes, we did today, but check out. You should get, when you sub to the channel, you'll get the alerts when it's scheduled to fire off. Sometimes there's an issue with the streaming platform, EVMUG, so I apologize for that. Follow me on social media too, on X, at Rich Q on Q. Nick says, again, he follows up, Q, I think the pitching is not going to be an issue, but as you said, it's always about October baseball and how these bats can hit or lack thereof. That's the problem with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, if you're looking at projected lineup, Turner, Schwarber, Harper, Bohm, Marsh, Garcia, probably Stott, and then Real Muto, and then let's not forget Justin Crawford. That's kind of like your projected Phillies lineup. I'm not writing it in stone. I think having Alex Bohm hit fourth is a stretch, but you got a right-handed bat that's going to balance out the lineup. So you hit cleanup. It's actually a role he's had some success with in the past. His OPS is 746. I mentioned these other teams in the NL East. So we kind of gave you the lay of the land with the Mets and what they did and what they didn't do in the offseason. I did also talk a little bit about the Atlanta Braves. I mean, the Atlanta Braves, that's a team that should win 85-88 as well. And that's a veteran team that's also going to get back players that got hurt at the most inopportune time. Marlins and the Nationals, I would lean them. I see Washington winning 65-70 and Miami winning probably 72-75. Now, Miami was interesting because last year, 79-83, they were one of the best teams since late June. They didn't really do a substantial amount. The question is if some of their young prospects are going to be ready to hit and to get out there. So we got a lot of baseball to talk about. As I mentioned, Jovan Alfred's going to join me in a couple moments. The Tony Clark issue, we talked a lot at great length regarding Tony Clark yesterday. All around, just a crazy, crazy situation. I think my 2 cents. Now, if you're talking about who you would like to bring in, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, what a guy like Scott Boras? Now, we know that's not going to happen. Major League Baseball and the Players Association, it's a mess. It's a mess. It is a mess. And whoever inherits the nonsense left behind by Tony Clark is going to be challenged. And I can't tell you who we're going to throw in there to save the day, right? But the fact that you had Tony Clark, who's been around the block under investigation, then we learn he has an affair with his wife's sister. I mean, come on. What are we doing? But then you talk about the financial improprieties, money being mishandled. It's a mess. And it's really a piss poor timing for another scandal to hit baseball or MLB PA, especially one that basically needs a solid direction. And we know for a fact these two are headed towards something very, very, very contentious. I think we both know that. And that's why I said yesterday on the air, I would have waited a year and then come full circle and try to figure things out. But they're not going to do that. They're just not. They're not going to do that. And I think no matter what, at the end of the day, we are definitely headed towards a lockout. You might as well enjoy this season. All right, as promised, 3 o'clock straight up. We haven't spoken to him in a while, but it's always good to touch base with my guy, Jovan Alfred, who's got a pulse, a beat on what's going on in Philadelphia sports. Look at it, trim, fiddle. He's got the good beard going. He's all clean and all. You know, I felt like, you know, the last time we were probably talking about Philadelphia Eagles getting ready to make a run here. What's going on with the Philadelphia 76ers? Yep. So I feel like nothing has really changed, although those two teams haven't really, fulfilled the little hearts of the fan base. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing good. Glad to be on always with you, Rich.
Well, I
Whether it's talking about the Sixers
yes,
or
yes.
everything with the Eagles and even some baseball. So you gotta love it, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let's get into a little baseball. So first, I want to get into the Tony Clark situation. Where I know all you can do is shake your head. I mean, what's
Yeah,
this man thinking? By the way, I mentioned this before. It's like you never ever park your car in someone else's driveway, let alone your neighbor's driveway. You don't even have to
yeah.
worry about asking permission. I mean, what are we doing here with this guy, right? And now there's the issue with the financial stuff going on. I think it comes at the worst time. Do you believe right now MLB or MLBPA they will look outside to bring in counsel, or do you think they're going to keep it in house with Meyer?
Based obviously based on the story that came out from Rosenthal, obviously Meyer is in the running. I did see a couple of former players also in the mix. I think Daniel Murphy and Andrew Miller as possibilities, which, I could, I could see it potentially from, just having a former player aspect. I know Meyer, I think what in the story said that he has like the push of Boris, which,
Yeah,
that
yes.
kind of scares people a little bit because it's like, okay, which side are you really which which side are you really on in
Right,
that
right,
in that situation? It's just knowing that this lockout is looming. This was kind of like, I don't know, I guess the best way to say it is like almost kind of the worst possible news, because this is like now the focus is now shifted from the owners now to the player association. Now it's like you guys have dysfunction and what you're going to
right.
do and how you're going to fix this and that. So it's going to be rather interesting, because if I'm the players association, you probably want to figure out something sooner rather than later, hopefully by opening day, just given that, with everything going on. And I think I read in that story that, teams were already, holding, meetings to try
Right.
to figure out who's going where and who's doing what. So it will be interesting. Like you said, it seems like Meyer is the guy, and it helps when you have the mega agent and Scott Boris with his 2 cents, and we know how much money Boris
Well, I was going to
clients
say you
get.
don't have to worry about a salary cap, right?
Yeah, no, because Boris clients they hit the bank every time. It doesn't matter if you're a pitcher or a hitter; everybody's getting paid some way or another.
Yeah. Well, speaking of players obviously getting paid, we know the moves that the Phillies made, bringing back Realmuto, obviously Schwarber. I want to get your initial reaction to Dombrowski's comments regarding Bryce Harper, because I know on the surface sometimes there are certain things that you shouldn't say out loud, but they can still be true and accurate. And I felt that okay, maybe a person, an individual in that position shouldn't go out in public. But then when I kind of went back and I listened to the comments, he's basically saying, look, I don't know if he's going to get back to that elite play. Like I really felt Bryce, I believe Bryce Harper has a little bit of a insecurity issue. Like
Hmm.
for as cocky and arrogant as he comes off, I feel as though sometimes certain things kind of rub him and tweak him the wrong way. And this obviously rubbed and tweaked him the wrong way. And
Right.
I will say this, and then I want to get your thoughts. I don't think anything the GM said was not accurate. I thought it was all accurate. And maybe it's the best thing that this team needs to kind of light a spark going into the season.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would think for a lot of Phillies fans, they felt the same way about Harper, but just don't talk about on social media. So it's not like what Dombrowski was saying out of turn now. For a lot of people, was it shocking? Yeah, because you usually don't hear the general manager make those type of statements. But like you said, looking back at it, he didn't say anything that was wrong. And number two, it wasn't like he was throwing him under the bus,
Yeah.
like saying
It's
like
not like
this
what
guy
Woody
is trash.
Johnson did with Justin Fields,
Right,
basically saying
exactly.
we'd be a good football team if my quarterback, the one thing he needs to do is throw the football.
Exactly. So I understand from like some fans like saying, and I think some fans also lump this in with the whole Cassiano situation when it comes to Dombrowski. But I think, for Harper, with your GM, saying this, he's kind of putting
On
you on the
notice.
spotlight to see, can you show up and be that guy? Because anybody that watched this team for the last few years know that while they have the Schwarbers and they have the Turners, it also comes down to Bryce Harper. Can
Correct.
Bryce Harper regain that MVP form? Can he become an all star again? Right? Like, those are all things people want to see from this guy. They want to see, can he can he do what he's supposed to do? Because we already know Kyle Schwarber is going to do what he does. He does it at
Right.
the top of the lineup all the time, and it's not so much what Bryce can you get in the regular season. It's what Bryce can you get in the postseason. And that postseason Bryce, I think we didn't see it. We haven't seen these last two series really. I mean, the Dodger series, I think he might have did something, but not really. He didn't have the moments, right? Like that Mets series, obviously Phillies losing four, but he had that moment against Severino when he hits the home run.
Right. Right.
2023, he has the moment, with Arcia, and obviously 22 with the home run in the NLCS against the
Right.
Padres. Like he has those moments, and I think people now want to see those moments again because they know that this team has the guys. It's can you hit in the postseason, which has been a bugaboo for this team. It's almost been like your top of the lineup doesn't do anything, but your bottom of the order does. But at a certain point, your top guys have to do something, which
Three.
they really did not do much of in
No.
that Dodgers series for how well your starting pitching did for
Right.
you in that series.
Right, that's it. They couldn't move runners over. We know that, and then obviously how they
Hmm.
lost the last game in extras in horrible fashion. But listen, he 3 of 15 last year with a couple strikeouts, right? And I think ultimately what the contract they gave him. I mean, look, he leaves Washington. They win a World Series. Now, I think two things can be true here, and I get hammered when I say this. I think he's a great player, but I think he's
Yeah.
overrated. And I feel as though when you say that, it's almost like taboo, sacrilegious. But the bottom line is, if you look at the numbers going back from a couple seasons ago, I'm not talking about his MVP season, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you give him the credit where the credit is due. But again, you're talking, all right, you had the wrist issue, a little banged up, 27 home runs, 75 ribbies, 261, 132. That's all well and good if you're not a $250 million player, right? I mean, that's just the
Right.
bottom line. And his OPS last year, 844, lowest since 2016, 261 batting average, worse since 2019. He was limited to, I think, 131, 132 games because of that wrist injury. We know he was frustrated. They've trailed off. So he's not the peak player. And I just feel as though he has to be that catalyst. And I also think he gets a free pass. I think if it's a Jalen Hurts or Joel Embiid in Philadelphia, they are always being criticized. Always. They're under the microscope. And I feel like Bryce Harper always gets a pass.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to look at it, and just thinking about it more, right? Like we don't. There was a certain point in time. I think people remember this. There were a certain point in time we were putting like Trout and Harper in that conversation, right? Where Judge and Otani is at, right? Like, but now things have changed, and now Harper isn't on that tier of Judge and Otani. Like when Judge and Otani come to the plate, they are feared, right?
Right.
Not saying that Harper isn't, but
Right.
like
But to your
you,
point, though, to your point, as a Yankees fan, I got to see one do it in the playoffs. I already know what the other can do in Ohtani, right?
yeah,
Because
exactly. No,
I'm
that's
trying
true.
to I'm wrestling that with Judge as well in the postseason. Handle chimes in DB. Those comments shouldn't have been made publicly. You need to know your players, and Bryce has always been sensitive. I still would have made the comments. I think the bottom line is they're putting them on notice because it was all about running it back, running it back, running
Hmm.
it back, and I think too, the frustration from the Philly fans stems from they're trying to harken back to the era where every single solitary season, whether it was, pardon me, Howard, Rollins, Utley, you know, Chooch, that
Yeah,
era, pardon me, that
Hamels.
era
Hmm.
of Phillies baseball that was constantly winning divisions, going to the playoffs, winning a World Series, getting back to the World Series, losing to the Yankees. Like they're trying to almost compare that era to this
And
era,
it,
and this
and
era
it,
is almost hollow. And the
yep,
difference is that era was homegrown. Let's just
yep,
call it for what it is.
exact. Yes, yes. That era was homegrown, like you said, from Ruiz to Victorino
Oh, Hamels.
to Hamels. The rotation, right? Like it was homegrown, and you saw the reaps of that. You saw the reaps of those rewards, right? And people, and I think people remember that group didn't have it easy at first, right? They had their trials and
Of the
tribulations.
Colorado series.
Yeah,
Remember that they got I think
mhm,
they got swept.
yeah, they got in '07. They looked like almost like how a team when they first get there, you're like, oh my god, like fish out of water. But then obviously, what happens in 2008? They figure it out. They get it together. '09, they try to run it back to repeat, fall short to the Yankees. But
Right.
then obviously 2010 they do some things, but then you see that core eventually,
Of
tailed off
course.
because of injuries and just because of age. This new era of Phillies baseball, like you said, they haven't gotten there. Like they got to the mountaintop in 2022. I won't say by luck, but they just got, as we see in all sports in the playoffs, you get hot and things can happen. They got hot in 22, but then they didn't recapture that momentum. It's been downhill ever since. You go against Houston, 23, you lose in 7 to the Diamondbacks, and with it in a year where a lot of people thought that this Phillies team, if they in 23, if they could have got to World Series, they could have beat
Correct.
Texas. They could have went head to head slugging against them, but they didn't do it. They fall short against the Mets. They fall short on the Dodgers. And you look at the last two ones, it's all falling on the top of the order, all falling on the big bats, the Turners, like you said, Harper doesn't get
But
as
how do you explain their
scrutinized.
inability to not hit though in the
Yeah,
postseason? I
yeah.
understand sometimes you just meet up with good pitching, but there were a lot of times they showed zero patience at the
Yep.
plate.
That's
Right,
where
if
it
you
comes
get
down.
runners
That's what it comes
on
down
and the
to.
leadoff, you walk the leadoff batter, and then all of a sudden, Castellanos was so frustrating. And I know he's no longer here, but first ball, fastball hitter, right? I mean, like not no patience. Like, do
Hmm.
they just get? Do you believe they get too tight come October?
I could see it. I think they lose all, and this is the problem with this team. Sometimes they don't know how to manufacture runs to small ball, like almost like
Correct.
how Charlie Manuel did with those guys. Like, yeah, we got big boppers, but we're going to move guys along, station to station baseball, still bases, all those things. This team has become so hesitant on, oh my God, all right, there's two runners on. I need to hit a home run. Like I need to hit a home run to kind of shake things up. And you lose all your plate approach right there. I think we see it with Trey Turner a lot in the postseason, where you was like, Trey, just put the ball in play. You have the speed, put the ball in play, and he's swinging over top of pitches.
Correct.
Harper, his issue last year was that teams knew, okay, number one, teams knew your cleanup hitter wasn't that great last
Nope.
year.
Nope.
So we can attack you, and we know you're going to be over aggressive. So we don't have to throw you a pitch in the strike zone. We're going to make you chase down and away. And what happens? He continues to chase down the way. So
Yeah.
it comes down to the plate approach. It comes down, to the manager too, with just how he does things, where he puts guys at. I know a big conversation now is Alec Bohm back in a cleanup spot, and obviously that has people
That's what I
incensed
mentioned. Yep. Yep. But you know what?
to
Before you make your comment on that, listen, I know hitting him fourth is a stretch, but you also have a right-handed bat to kind of balance out the lineup.
yeah, exactly. And I think for that cleanup spot, you don't want somebody that's just gonna put the ball in play, right? If the Alec Bohm that we saw in 20, what was that, 23, that got, or was it 24, that got to the All-Star game, and he had
Mhm.
what, like 70 something RBIs by like the halfway point. If that Alec Bohm shows up, because it's a contract year for him too. Like he has to show up or he's going to be out the door, and Aiden Miller walks in to take his spot. So it's not ideal, but who else are you going to throw there, right? Are you going to put JT in that situation? I don't know, because JT's offensive production has kind of simmered. Do you put Adolis Garcia there? I could see it, but I don't know which Garcia is going to show up. That's it's a
Yeah.
lot of ifs, but Bohm can't be successful if number 2 and 3, Turner and Harper, don't do their jobs as well.
A couple guys are chiming in pretty much the same sentiment. How much of this falls ultimately, like how much pressure now do we look at Rob Thompson, right? And getting them over the hump, and how much do you put on Rob Thompson? I mean, I think hitting coaches are overrated in baseball. I think at this stage of the game, if you've been around 8, 9, 10 years, you should be able to move
Hmm.
a runner across. You should know how to lay
Yes.
down a bunt. And it's interesting too because it's funny, when the stuff hit the fan with Castellanos, and he kind of takes a little veiled shot at Rob Thompson. I'm just
And
wondering,
Kevin Long.
okay, yeah, exactly. So it's like, I'm wondering how much now do we look at Rob Thompson and say, okay, if they can't get to a World Series and win it, maybe he's not the guy to lead them there.
I think that's going to become the conversation. It's almost like what's the comparison here? It's almost like the Doc Rivers effect, right? We know what you could do in the regular season, but can you do it in the postseason? Doc has been living off of the '08 championship, right? And Thompson doesn't have that championship. He just has what he did with the Yankees as a bench coach. So I think the pressure is going to be on him, not only from a hit perspective, right, but also just from his managerial decisions with the pitching staff and how he works this rotation. In 22, people were critical of him taking out Zach Wheeler for Jose Alvarado and how that blew up.
Yep.
People were critical of him just this last postseason, where he would bring in David Robertson, 40-year-old
Yep.
old David Robertson, in the pitch, the sixth, seventh inning against the Dodgers. Meanwhile, you have a guy in Tanner Banks who doesn't see the field, and he was one of your better relievers, your best reliever by far as a lefty with, I think, an under 3 ERA. So those little things add up, and people get tired of hearing the same old thing. Like people, was it in the Castellanos story where they tried to paint the picture of him like not being like, they were happy that they won the NL East, but he wasn't satisfied because it was like basically like, it doesn't matter as long as we win the championship. And I'm
Correct.
like,
Correct.
he's not wrong. It's like
He's not
right
wrong.
person, wrong person, right messenger type of situation.
But it
Like,
almost feels as though they're too good of a team. Like they should win the NL East, period. Right.
yes,
And
yes,
if you look at the projected lineup, Turner is such an enigma. We know Schwarber is basically feast or famine. Then you Harper, Bohm, Marsh, Garcia, Stott, Real Muto, and then obviously Crawford. And we've been clamoring, or the Philly fans been clamoring for some of these prospects. And I'm
hmm
wondering too, though, if they start to get out of the gate April, May, and they're 10 and 18. The offense is, Harper's frustrating. The other elephant in the room is Wheeler. I mean, and I didn't even
yes,
bring that up with the starting
yes.
rotation, right? So I don't know. I feel as though they're too good of a team to not win at least 88 to 91. I don't have them as a 95 win team. I think the Mets look, Met fans say what you want about the offseason. I get it, but you got to look at who they added, not
Yeah,
who they lost at the
yeah.
end of
No,
the day.
Mets did a good job with what
Yeah,
they were able to piece
yeah.
together.
Well, they added what they needed to add. They
hmm
defensively, and they added a couple more frontline starters. And we know that, right? I mean, Bichette and Peralta and Williams and Marcus Simeon and Polanco. You lose Alonso and McNeil and Diaz and Nimmo. Okay, but they wanted to focus on what's kind of been their bugaboo, and that's defensive depth and improve the starting rotation and,
hmm
and pitching, right? Because you can never have too much pitching, right? Top of the rotation arm. The Marlins are a
Yeah.
young team. They got some prospects. I'm curious to see if or when they're going to get called up. Washington's a bad team. And then I think the only other team that you worry about in a veteran team is Atlanta. So if you kind of handicap this division, do you think it kind of falls into, the Phillies winning their 85 to 91 or their 90 plus to 92, 93, and then the Mets and the Braves battling out for number two in a potential
I,
wild card?
I could see it, health permitting. Like you said, I think the Phillies do win 90 plus games. And I think when the win totals first came out, I think earlier this month, like they were very even. Like Braves, Mets, Phillies were all like a game apart
Which
because
tells you something, which tells you
it,
what the odds makers think.
exactly. The odds makers think this is going to be a division that comes down to the last few weeks of
Yep.
September, and it's going to come down to health, right? I think for the Mets, like you mentioned, the Mets, they did a great job, right? And they, you add Freddie Peralta, who was a bona fide ace to that staff, and they're also going to depend on young guys in that rotation, the Jonah Tongs and the Nolan McLeans, to see if he can be that, see if they can help out. In the Braves, the only thing that's going to hold back that Braves team, and it's been an issue for them the last couple of years, has been injuries. Just having
Right.
the unfortunate injuries. You have a healthy Acuna back. Your offense is pretty much healthy and should be good. Issue for them is what's going to be in their rotation. I think today, we found out that Spencer Swellenbach, and Hudson Waldrip are both, got some elbow injuries or something of that ilk. So that puts them a little bit behind, the 8 ball of when they will return. But this division is going to be very close, and it's only the Phillies. The Phillies have to handle business on the road, but they also have to handle the business in the division, which
Yeah.
means you got to beat up on the Marlins. You got to beat up on the Nationals. The Nationals have given them some issues
And the
last
Marlins
season.
had a very good June last year. I mean, they came
Yes,
on late and they won
yes.
some games and they were very
hmm
competitive.
100%. And this team just has to, talking to Phillies, they just have to do what they do best, do their job. And that means the offense is going to have to carry some because, like you said, the rotation is that you don't know, right? Zach
Yeah,
Wheeler is not going to start, probably not going to be ready. He's not going to be ready. We probably know that. But it's going to be, can that offense carry them? Because I think you have one of the better bullpens in the majors.
yeah.
I think your bullpen's really good. I think you have a very good bullpen. It's just going to be, can your offense produce? Can the big bats produce? And where we're not complaining about, oh my God, Trey Turner's hitting like 200, like
Right, and
in the
right,
two
and
hole, and he's
he's
not stealing
he's
base.
in a 3 of 22 slump, and they have to, cheer him when he comes up to bat. DB Handel says, "All this talk goes back to the importance of Harper having an MVP season." Sal in Baltimore, who's actually a Philly fan, not an O's fan, but a Ravens fan, says, "I think it boils down to hitting October. That's all I'm concerned about." Q. Mark in Wallingford chimes back in, "Wheeler, Wheeler, Wheeler, guys, it's gotta be on him this season." Look, he's gotta come back healthy. I
It's
mean,
got
you're
to be
talking
on.
about
It's got to be on Nola too. Has
well,
to be on Nola.
he you know my thoughts over the years, Nola, that has always rubbed Philly fans the wrong way. Could have electric stuff, but he is the definition of an enigma. When
Hmm.
Aaron
And
Nola
last year was that
finally,
example. Last
yeah,
season was
when he
that.
retires, I'm wondering how people will look at his career as a Philly, right? I mean, the thing is, people used to get on Hamels, but Hamels had electric stuff. It's just,
Yeah.
at times it was always get to the postseason and do what you need to do. And he was a wonderful pitcher, man. And a lot of times he didn't get the run support, but then
Hmm.
he stepped up when they needed him, NLCS and the World Series. Nolan needs to have his, you know, stretch run late September. We need this game, right? You're the stopper. You're
Like he did
going
in
out.
22, where
Correct,
he
correct,
really came on at the end, helped them
correct.
clinch that spot
Yep.
and carried it on. And I think for Nola, what's going to be huge for him and a few of these guys, not only for Phillies but across the majors, is what are they going to do in the World Baseball Classic?
Right.
I'm really interested to see where Nola's at. I think him being in this position, I think will only benefit him because you're going to be playing in the high importance, big stakes, games. Will you
Pressure.
show up? And exactly, I want to see, does he have that off speed stuff working? Because we know when Aaron Nola is good, when that off speed is working, when the changeup is working, and he's hitting the spots and he's doing what he's supposed to do. Last year, obviously, he was dealing with injury, but even when he came back, I think his first start coming back against the Nats, they just rolled over them. The big inning. And that was the thing for him last year. The big inning. You're just like, here comes the big inning. So while you do want it to be Willer, right? You do hope that Willer comes back looking like the guy that we've seen over the last few years. Is going to have to come down to Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola
Right.
has to step in and be that ace momentarily until Willer comes back, because I already know what you're going to get from Christopher Sanchez. I think he's a
Yep.
star in the making.
Yep.
Luzardo, if Luzardo can pick up where he left off last year, I think the way Luzardo bounced back last year after that blow up start against the Brewers where they just left him out there and he, had to kind of figure it out. He was great, especially in the playoffs. Luzardo was just tremendous. So you got him, you know, you don't have Suarez anymore, but you do, you're going to have the rookie and Painter, who it seems like I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's going to be really good. And then what do you do at 5? Taijuan Walker is probably your 5th guy, and a lot of Phillies fans hate that, but because
But you know what? He can. But here at that, you're 5 though. The way baseball is, let him eat some innings.
Exactly. If I can get a smooth, you know, 5 to 6, if I can get 6 out of time on Walker, sometimes you'll take that. Even if you get 5, that's perfect. So again, like this team, as like you said, we talk about it. They have everything on paper. Everything on
I
paper.
think the loss of Walker. I'm sorry. I think the loss of Suarez is huge. I
Yes, it
do
is.
because
Yes,
he
it is.
gave him innings. I mean, he threw close to 160 innings last year, and I know people will look at his record, 12-8. You got to go back and watch those games. I know his ERA was a little overblown, but whose isn't in baseball except for the kid in
Exactly.
Pittsburgh, right? I mean, it's like, but
But look what he does in the postseason
well,
too.
that's
Like
that's
you said,
exactly it.
he's good. Like you talk about a guy that has no fear. Give
Correct.
him the ball.
That's what I want.
I'll never forget in that Mets series where he struggled that year and he went out and gutted out
Yep.
4 innings, had
Yep.
like 8 strikeouts, and it was like this guy's legit. Like
Yep.
he can do it when the postseason lights are on. he's not phased, by those moments. So not having him is huge. And the fact that the Phillies didn't go out and address that with another arm is concerning, because there's some fans that wish they would have brought back a Walker Buehler, or maybe went after Chris Bassett, because of you don't have Suarez, you don't have, Willer, you're going to get him back when you get him back. So it's going to be a very interesting season. They're going to be in the territory of the Sixers, in that Sixers fans, some of them enjoy the regular seasons, others don't. It's like, wake me up till we get to the playoffs, and that's the same
Well,
thing with this Phillies
and
team.
you know what? I think that's more of an apples and oranges comparison, because ultimately, if you think about it, then you almost have to wonder, when you get to the trade deadline in July, if the Phillies are actually going to do something, whereas the Sixers did something, but it was the wrong
Exactly.
something, right? Which, by the
Exactly.
way, 3:30 on a Woosah Wednesday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here, Jovan Alford, kind enough to join me for a couple moments. I do want to switch gears. I know you were kind of tweeting this the other day, and I know, look, it's February. We're bleeding into March. Everyone's still, at least in the tri-state area, just kind of stinging from what the Sixers did with McCann, and certainly stinging with the Eagles getting bounced against the 49ers in the wild card game, and then having to watch, my guy Slinging Sammy win a Super Bowl, right? And I'm still smiling, my guy Sam Darnold. But the football talk, we know it's always so prominent, especially in the tri-state area. And I
Mhm.
feel as though the Eagles are under the microscope going in the offseason, because they've done a lot of things that a lot of the fans don't like. But if you
Mhm.
think about it, it's kind of par from the course. And what I mean is, I still would have moved on from the head coach several years ago. Now, he rewarded them with the Super Bowl win, but I still said, hey, make a move, try to bring in a guy like Kubiak, right? We
Mhm.
saw the debacle that was Patullo, and then finally going outside and bringing in Reich. And now you got the A.J. Brown trade rumors and, whatever. Then the newest one now is Jalen Hurts, right? The Eagles should draft a quarterback. Now, I said this. I think going into this next season, I
Mhm.
feel as Jalen Hurts will be a Bryce Harper and an Embiid. He will be so under the microscope that it
Mhm.
might potentially be his last season under center for the Philadelphia Eagles. You never know. But
Mhm.
right now, I'm not going to do you bring in a veteran like Bradford, you draft Carson Wentz. Okay, as long as you play well, you don't have to look over your shoulder. Like, I'm
Right.
kind of, I'm past that. And I feel as though there's like Jalen Hurts, Bryce Harper, Embiid, they're all these lightning rods in Philadelphia. And I think a lot of that is conjured up because of these jackass clowns doing what we do for a living. Like, at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts just wins you football games. You might not like, how he looks, how he
E
sounds, how he talks, how he plays. It might not be aesthetically pleasing at times. Okay, I get it. But ultimately, what you're suggesting is, right now, draft a quarterback, which, if you do that, what happens? You now have drama. You have
Mhm.
controversy, because people are already clamoring for McKee. I've had people commenting and saying, well, you know what? We would rather start him over Jalen Hurts. You're talking about a quarterback that's gone to two out of the last three Super Bowls, could have won two of them, and I'll play Patrick Mahomes twice. I
And
get
took
it.
you to the playoffs 5 straight years.
Okay, right, exactly. And I'm just, I am curious your thought right now, state of the Philadelphia Eagles, how important, with everything going on, right? Because you might get some retirements, and then we got to, beg Fangio to come back if you're the Eagles brass. I feel as though this is a huge off season for the franchise.
It's huge, it's a big, it's pivotal, whichever adjective you want to use. Like, it is huge for this team, because I think the way they went out was not probably to the liking of Jeffrey Lurie, and how things just kind of unraveled after coming off of a Super Bowl, and just this team seemingly, especially on the offensive side of the ball, being so stubborn, starting with the head coach being so stubborn to stick with his guy, to the point where it was a detriment and probably derailed your chances of getting back.
I
Back
believe it
to
did when you look at how everything else broke out. Now,
oh
I don't
yeah,
believe they were being Seattle in Seattle,
no, 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 no,
but
no,
to
no,
your
no.
point, they could have helped themselves a little more.
Exactly, and they didn't do that, right? I think, when you look at this team, like you said, the whole nonsense about people saying they should draft a quarterback. I saw one radio station in Philly talk about it. Jeremy Fowler is, saying, I believe these executives told me, like, they're not drafting a quarterback. I mean, number one, like you said, the guy just wins. Like you said, you might not like how he wins, but he wins, regardless. You might not like his regular season numbers, even though his regular season numbers were better this year from a passing perspective. You might not like that, but he does his job in the playoffs. He steps up when the bright lights are on. How many times do we see quarterbacks, mainly, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, they don't, bright lights come on. It
Listen,
doesn't happen.
that's that lot. That's their lot in life, especially, to be fair, when you look at the playoffs through the AFC. I mean, it was right there for them, especially
this year.
It got in. Yeah, this past year, 100%. No one can argue that, 100%.
So the idea of drafting the quarterback is just crazy. Just because this year's quarterback draft class is not the strongest, outside of, it's not the strongest, right? So you have that, like I said, the AJ Brown stuff. It seems like now the tone, or as they said, the vibes and the shifts are happening now. He's not going nowhere. He was never going nowhere. Like Howie Roseman, he'll eat a cap hit like he did with Carson Wentz. Only if he has to.
Though? But don't you think there's a disconnect? Like, I feel as though I look at Nick Sirianni and I don't believe he's a competent head coach. I think he's a cheerleader. And I think they won last year in spite of the fact that he was the head coach. You take away 2,000 yards from Saquon, the offensive line, everything, and they still, right?
And he was on the hot seat during the Super Bowl season.
Exactly. And that's my whole point. Like, I felt he has to be on the hot seat. He's got to be the bigger question mark going into the season, because I believe they brought in Frank Reich because now at least you have someone that has head coaching experience. So if they're 1-5, the offense is struggling, and AJ Brown's griping, and Jalen Hurts is pissed off, and Saquon's nicked up, and Sirianni looks clueless, then they turn around, they get rid of Sirianni, and they just slide in Frank Reich. Like, that's the danger you have being a head coach who is a lame duck head coach, or a coach on the hot seat, especially when you bring in a coordinator that has head coaching experience. And I think it was the smart move by the Philadelphia Eagles to bring in Frank Reich, but I also believe it was almost like a subtle, hey, Nick, don't stray too far. Like, because if we struggle out of the gate, it's an easy transition if they want to move in a different direction. I guess I'm saying all that to say that, to me, Brown, Hurts, Saquon, the line, those are all just smoke and mirrors. Going into the season, the issue has to be Nick Sirianni. And but when does Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie kind of just have that courageous conversation and said, how the hell did we win a Super Bowl with this guy? Like, he's not the answer.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think them kind of forcing his hand to go outside of the organization, especially going with a younger guy and Sean Mannion as your OC, that's telling, because now you're changing the philosophy. You're not staying in-house with the Patulos and Brian Johnson, or sticking with Steichen like you did first. You're going outside. You're poaching from another team because you saw what another team did and what Green Bay does with their offense.
And pardon me, I don't know why I said Frank Wright. I'm thinking of the Jets, and I apologize. I got my Jet fans in the corner of my eye when Aaron Glenn, so I'm like, yeah, you could have easily corrected me.
Don't worry. There were some Eagles fans that wanted Frank Reich back.
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself, hold on a second, let me back up. Because that kind of dismisses everything I was saying. But point being is, I know Sirianni's on the hot seat.
Oh yeah, and them getting a younger guy in Sean Mannion, who's viewed as this rising coach coming up, that Packers fans didn't want to see leave. Packers fans wanted to keep him as OC. They wanted Stenovich out the door. So the fact that you get him and he's bringing in his guys, it doesn't look good, because eventually it's going to come down to, okay, we brought in these fresh faces on offense and maybe things aren't working as well. Well, then you're not going to get rid of the OC so fast because he's still young. You might not get rid of the quarterback yet, because it's like, if you move on from who's your next option, it's going to go to the head coach, because it's going to be, okay, you don't call defensive play calls. You likely won't call offensive play calls. What do you do that's good? That
he cheers a lot. He's very demonstrative on the
he's not
sideline,
they want
and
to
he
put him
runs
as
in
the
players'
CEO head
faces.
coach. Yeah, they
No,
want to put him at the CEO head coach. He's not that, right? Like John Harbaugh is a CEO head coach. Mike
correct.
Tomlin is a CEO head coach. Nick Sirianni is nowhere nowhere in between that lexicon. And we saw what happened his first year when he did the play calling, he had to give it up because his boy Jonathan Gannon reportedly told him, listen, you got to make this change because if we don't, we might be out of a job. So
Correct. Correct. And that's the worst thing. Look, Dayball did it with Kafka. They gave him OC play calling duties, and then he stripped them. Now, obviously, Dayball got fired, and then Kafka was the interim coach. But still, right? It's like sometimes you have to delegate, and you have to have
mhm,
confidence in the people you're delegating to. And I think the problem with a guy like Nick Sirianni is he's got an ego.
yep.
Period. He's just got the ego. So now you bring in a young guy, as you mentioned, that his prior team did not want to see him get away. I see this two things happening. There's going to be a point in the offseason where a microphone's put in AJ Brown's face and they'll talk about the season and he was frustrated and didn't like losing and not getting his reps and his catches. And then are you on the same page as the head coach and the quarterback? And he just kind of gives you the side eye. Then the conversation is going to be, are they going to move him sometime in
Mhm.
June, July, maybe go after a wide receiver in the draft, whatever. I'm just saying, remember too, they don't have a ton of cap money. They got to move around. They got to figure out, they got to pay some of these young players.
Yeah,
That's the other thing.
and that falls on how we in this
Of
where
course, of
it
course.
falls on Roseman where he needs to do a good he has to hit a home run with this draft, and he has to hit a home run with his free agency decision because last year some of his free agency moves were not great. The
No,
Josh Uche signing did not pan out. Azeez Ojulari did not pan out. You
no.
know, you did not he did not do a good job with that pass rushing unit to the point where you were calling Darius Smith, who ended up retiring, and you had to bring back Brandon Graham. So he has to
Right,
do a
right.
great job because, like you said, they have to pay. They have to try to maybe you got to think they can create some more space by
Yep,
extending Jordan Davis, but then you got to pay Jalen Carter, who's going to demand a monster deal, right? Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are going into their
correct.
third years, and they're only getting better. So you're going to have to pay top tier money for cornerback. So he's going to have to do a great job drafting and signing free agents on the margins that can plug and play and fit in.
Yeah. All right, brother. I know I held you for a long time. We'll get into the Sixers maybe next week, because I did
Yeah.
not watch a second of All-Star Weekend. I did laugh at the Kevin Durant, the burner.
Oh yeah.
I basically said scrap the All-Star Weekend. Just scrap it. I don't care if ratings are up. Just get rid of it. It's a debacle. The product is so bad. It's bad. And yet
Yeah.
people are still arguing with me, well, would you rather watch college? Yeah, even though I'm going to watch the NBA, but the NBA product is so bad you can't prevent the tanking, you know, the Matador defense, the load management, just too many
And
issues. And I just
what was telling about All-Star Weekend is that Unrivaled One-on-One tournament was running coincide with All-Star Weekend, and there was more buzz about Unrivaled One-on-One tournament and how great it was, how the
yeah,
players were going at it and competing and playing hard.
20 years ago, you're not doing that. We're not doing that. 25 years ago, we're not.
Exactly. And now what is the NBA doing? Possibly considering making a one-on-one tournament for the All-Star game.
I feel as though there's just no rhyme or reason to what Adam Silver wants to do. Now let's have another loser tournament, an in-game season tournament. Let's take away the draft or reward the players or reward the teams, not reward the teams. When you start to get into reinventing the wheel, right? It's
Multiple
like
times
baseball
at
now,
that.
getting rid of the balls and strikes graphics. Well,
I
we want to
know.
talk about transparency, right? Like we want to talk about transparency. It's like, come on, man, and they're getting rid of that. That's absurd. The
Yeah, I
only
don't
reason I'm
understand
watching
that.
the baseball is to see. I want to watch. Come on, man, paint the corner right. Is that a ball? Is that a strike?
Exactly.
Oh man.
But we
What
got
you so
ABS, so it's
Yeah,
good. We
you
got
got.
ABS.
Are you still doing the pod? You have anything going on fan sided where we can
Uh
follow as always?
oh yeah. You can follow me obviously on Twitter at Jovan10. Same thing over at Blue Sky, totalsportslive.com. Just I want to say was it last week or early? It was last week. Last week posted some of my favorite season long
Okay.
futures bets that I like for player props. So because we do have some markets available right now across the book. So I have that live on totalsportslive.com, and UFL season's coming up very soon. So UFL is next month. So excited to really dive in, hit hard on that because it's always fun betting the UFL.
We
Always fun.
we we might have to get into that next week because I'm
Works for
going to have
me.
my MLS guy later on in the week talk a little
Ah,
MLS, and then yeah. Well, you were pretty good with the UFL. You were pretty
yeah,
good. You
it's a very if you watch and just understand just how spring football is so much dictated on quarterback play, you can really like
ah.
cook the
So
markets.
now let me ask you a question though. Would you
Mhm.
have confidence enough when you come on the air to back your play with all your picks?
100%. 100%. You already
All right.
know.
Well, I missed
100%.
you during the football season. We were loaded on BYP. Now everyone was getting on me because I had to come on my Man Up Monday and talk about me hitting 9 of 11 or 12
I heard
player
about
props.
that.
And you know what it was though? I warned I warned everyone to watch about when it comes to, and you know this, quarterback rushing yards in the Super Bowl, right?
Mhm.
Now you can go longest rush, but more times than not, if the ball's in the quarterback's hands late and they're winning and he's going to take a knee, he's losing yardage. It's
Yep.
exactly what happened with Mahomes a couple years ago, and it's exactly what happened with Darnold. But nobody wanted to listen to me.
Sometimes the bet that's not obvious is always the better bet. Like you
Well,
said, longest rush, good.
now the other question is, have you been dabbling in the association props? Because I know you love your rebounds.
I did I've have dabbled into the NBA, here and there a little bit. Not so much lately as we got close to the All-Star break, but like during that middle of like the season, I was on a nice little heater. I was on a nice little heater with some rebounds, some assists, some combo props. I was a little
Now,
bit
let me
on
ask
a
you
little bit on the
something. The
heater.
UFL with the props and the games, odds wise, now you can in game. Can you in game live betting in UFL?
Yes, you can end game on
Okay.
you can end game on it, yeah.
What I found is that a lot of these, whether it was DK or FanDuel or BetMGM, they've been doing it for years. When let's just say Kansas, let's just say the Eagles are playing the Giants, and it's next score, right? Anytime touchdown or next score, right? And you get that long gainer. So yeah, the Eagles they're on 25. They cross midfield, and now it's a first and 10, right? And now
Mhm.
you're flipping. You're looking at Saquon, Goddard, Smith. As you know, this is you have to watch. And I was saying this a lot on Back Your Play on the gambling pod. As they keep creeping down into the red zone, you see how fast sometimes they pull those props.
Yep.
They
Mhm.
pull them. They pull them, and that's the problem I have with some of these apps because it's like, well, wait a second, like you're pulling it right away, and I'm getting ready. Like you might have an opportunity to take my money because it's 50-50 on the next play. And
Exact
that's the
Yep.
problem. Like I tell people when you're doing the in-game live, you have to really keep it's almost like a stock. You got to
Mhm.
refresh because you can go to, Walker, next touchdown or anytime touchdown or next player scored plus 1200. And then all of a sudden they're at the 5 yard line and you go to refresh and put your bet in. They take Walker off the board.
Yeah, no, and like you said, that's the ups and downs with live game betting. I think most recently NFL live game betting. I think I did. It was more of a halftime play. It was I think that Bears Packers game, and I took Jade Walker anytime touchdown. I think it was like plus 1200. I grabbed it at halftime, and obviously he scores
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
touchdown. And
That's a
but
great call.
that was it's at halftime, so let me try to double back because people don't know, like like at halftime, sometimes you get better odds for those things because of how the game situation and scenario, is already
Right.
playing out.
Like I felt too, and this was when I was doing it with Lloyd prior to Super Bowl. The ones that I told people to hammer, I loved JSN the under.
Oh
Now,
yeah,
obviously,
especially
I
against
felt they were going to,
Gonzalez. Yeah.
yeah, I felt they were going to double, but we also had Cup over 5.5 or 4.5 receptions because I figured they were going to blanket JSN,
Hmm.
right? And then they were going to go in Cup's direction. Kenneth Walker, anytime touchdown was an easy score. Rushing
Easy.
yards was an easy score. Darnold under passing yards, I thought was easy. I did play Drake May under passing yards, obviously, because the game was so lopsided. He had to throw him back in. I mean, it's crazy to think he threw for close to 300 yards in a game, but he played horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
that game,
I took the under passing attempts for that one.
okay, that game to me, the line told me everything I needed to know.
Yep.
4.5. I just, for the life of me, I came on the air that Friday prior to Super Bowl and said this might be the easiest game to predict. I
Hmm.
felt they were going to absolutely make life miserable. And I told Lloyd, I got to find a prop here for team sacks. I also said anytime score defense, which
Yep.
played into the
Yes, it
equation. But
did.
yeah, I mean, I was hitting them left and right. And it was like almost like a Q Adonis, not Notre Dame, right? And the ones I got wrong. Um, but to me, Seattle's defense was just poised to absolutely destroy and disrupt New England. And, I
Hmm.
know everyone was saying, well, 14-3, Fugazi, fraud, exposed. Yeah, I think there's an element to that. That's why I caution people. And before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts on this. People are looking for this season's New England Patriots,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of Giant fans are like, it's set. And I said, pump the brakes. A couple things.
Slow down.
Yes, you had a quarterback in May that played like an MVP, arguably an MVP, right? You have a defense that showed out and sold out, and you also had a weak schedule.
Yep.
So you got to be careful if you're a Giant fan. There's no way they're flipping the script. They might improve to 6, 7, maybe 8 wins. But the team everyone's jumping on right now, you just mentioned them, the Chicago Bears. I already checked. There's been money's coming in heavy on the Bears to get out of the NFC.
That's you know what that reminds me of too? It reminds me of how people were feeling about the Lions when they
Well,
started
it's
to
it's
hit
it's it's it's
when they were
recency
hitting their
bias.
crescendo. Hmm.
It's recency bias. That's all that is, right? And the Lions actually they had it last year if you think about it. Now this is prior to them getting the NFC Championship, the fourth down call, whatever. But last year it was right there for them, and then
Yep.
Washington goes in there and absolutely blasts them.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So the fact that, like you said, the Giants aren't there yet, and the difference is too, the Patriots, they did a great job of drafting, but in free agency they did an amazing job.
Amazing job. Amazing
They
job.
spent the cash in the trenches to
Yeah.
upgrade
You
at
were a
those.
year off. You said 2 years ago, don't sleep on the Patriots. So
I did.
yeah. Listen, the Giants are not. They'll be lucky to win. Harbaugh will account for 2+ wins, right?
I can see that.
But they never win games in the division. They can't beat the Eagles and they can't beat the Dallas Cowboys. So I already started to look at projected win totals,
Hmm.
right? Dallas right around 8.5 to 10, the Eagles at 10 to 12, the Giants probably 4 to 7, Washington. I don't know where I'm really at with
Yeah.
Washington and Jaden Daniels, but yeah, the UFL. All right, we might have to. I guess down to business pod. He might be an Eagles fan, probably mocking me with my Giants
Oh
sentiment.
no,
But
he's a Giant. He's a Giants fan.
oh, all right,
He's a Giants fan.
all right. Wishful thinking, then, right? Wishful thinking. I don't see it happening, but so UFL starts next week.
Next month. So we're
Oh, next.
talking. Yeah, I think it's like March 27th. I think
All
March
right,
27th. I think
we'll have to do a weekly little UFL segment, free picks, right?
might as well.
All right,
You
bro.
never know. You find some value here and there.
Hey, that's what it's, and we give it away free. There's no shilling. There's no one
Exactly.
800 nonsense.
No promo code.
Exactly. All right, brother. I appreciate the time greatly. We'll hook up again next week, man. Thank you so much,
For
Jovan.
sure. Appreciate it.
All right, you got it, brother. Be well. There you have it, my guy Jovan Alford. It was good to get him back on the air. Give him a follow on X. He does a fantastic job. He gives some really good insight, and he's kind of my thinking too with some of the goofballs on the airwaves talking about trade this guy, trade that guy, draft this guy, draft that guy. It's just never a good look, man. It's just never ever a good look. It isn't. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a Giants fan. I don't know what to tell you on that one. Down to business pod. Tuning in every week from now on. We appreciate that, brother. No, Javon's great. Javon used to come on every week during the football season. And then schedules got a little hectic for the both of us, but we were doing a weekly spot with the gambling. And it worked out really well. It worked out really, really, really well. Let me squeeze in a couple more comments before we get out of here. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, talk a little more baseball, a lot more of the NBA, MLS as well. Larry Henry for the Athletics going to join us for a couple moments. What do we got here? CY chimes in. Q, this is a shocking resignation to say the least, but I don't know what the hell this grown-ass man was thinking. I have no idea. I don't. I mean, listen, you don't want to make light of it because there's other parties involved. And obviously, this is a married man that had an extramarital affair. Oh, by the way, with his wife's sister. I mean, it's just, come on. Now, if you're talking about replacement, I know the Athletic mentioned Daniel Murphy. I know Jovan mentioned that as well. But I can't overstate it. You just don't park your car in someone else's driveway, let alone your neighbor's. And that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did. And that's unacceptable behavior. It is. It's unacceptable behavior by a grown ass man. And I think you're going to dig deeper, 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 and more stuff is going to come out because it usually does. It usually does. I mean, we've seen this. We've seen these types of scandals before, have we not? But I think it comes at the most inopportune time for baseball. And I don't want a Bruce Mayer anywhere near MLBPA. I told you I'd rather have the lawyer Marino in. But this comes months before the current CBA is set to expire, and that's December 1st. And now what you have, because everything's in flux, the union, MLB owners, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be such a furious labor battle ahead of this new CBA. And that's why I believe enjoy this baseball season because we're headed towards a lockout in 2027. And you know the owners are going to push hard, right, for a salary cap. And now, well, some might, majority will. Majority will, some won't. And we worked through the pros and cons of this. We did. You know, the rich get richer, the big market teams, here we go, spend, spend, spend. Now you can't do that. But now you're also limiting the players' earning power. And players don't want that. They don't. Bad look all around. All right, got to start wrapping it up on a Wednesday. Special thanks to our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Get ready with tea. Three Brooks Bourbon, Pliable in Belmar. Also checking us out on the AUDACY app, SR 1029 FM, The Game, Coastal Sports Digital Network. If you like the comment, you can sub to the channel as well. You guys have been fantastic. We are back in the saddle manana. Like, comment, subscribe, more importantly, to the YouTube channel, because then you'll know the notifications when we fire off. We had a little issue with the platform today, but we typically will throw in the alerts so you'll know exactly when the show is scheduled. We will be back in the saddle manana. Appreciate Jovan Alford extended time on this Wednesday. Good stuff with the comments, you guys. I will get to all of you on X as well that have been chiming in. But as always, we appreciate you tuning in on a Wednesday edition of On Cue. A little power hour today. We'll hit it hard on a Thursday. We're traveling on Friday, then back at it, regular spot and time next Monday to Friday. Also adding in a couple of different baseball features as well and some gambling portions of the show. That'll be powered by our good friends over at Three Brooks Bourbon and Played Again Sports. All right. So as I mentioned, good stuff. Appreciate you guys chiming in. You guys have a wonderful Sports Wednesday. Enjoy it. We'll be back in the saddle mañana. As always, I'm Rich Quinones. Be safe, be sound. Hasta luego, buen día.